Every tragedy begins with a story. Some are written in plain sight, while others hide in shadows until it's too late. In this case, the story wasn't written on paper. It wasn't spoken out loud. It lived inside a phone, tucked away in a series of text messages that seemed ordinary until investigators took a closer look. The messages belonged to the alleged shooter, and they raised a question that still haunts this case. Did his roommate, the person living only a few steps away, know more than they admitted? Could the red flags have been noticed earlier? Tonight, we are pulling back the curtain on this forensic puzzle. We will explore how digital investigators piece together conversations, timelines, and hidden details from the shooter's phone. We'll analyze what those texts revealed, what they concealed, and why they matter. This is not just about crime. It's about responsibility. It's about the thin line between private words and public consequences. And most of all, it's about asking the question we often avoid when secrets are hidden in messages. Who is responsible for reading between the lines? When the news first broke, it spread like wildfire. A name that was already tied to heated debates, Charlie Kirk, became connected to an incident that stunned the nation. Reports of a shooter, whispers of political motives, and speculation about connections quickly filled headlines. But beyond the noise, one detail drew investigators deeper: the shooter's phone. Every text, every chat, every deleted message became a potential key to understanding what really happened. The media painted contrasting pictures. Some outlets focused on political angles, others questioned mental health, and a few speculate about negligence by those closest to the shooter. Yet, one element remained consistent: the text messages were central. They weren't just random words. They were digital footprints leading into the shooter's mind. Authorities confirmed that the phone contained weeks of conversations, some casual, others unsettling. But the most disturbing part? These weren't hidden in encrypted apps or secret codes. Many were ordinary texts sent at ordinary times. The public wanted answers. Who knew what and when? Could anyone, especially the roommate, have prevented the tragedy? This is where forensic experts stepped in, not just to retrieve data, but to interpret it, turning fragments of words into a timeline of intent. To understand the messages, you first have to understand the messenger. The shooter wasn't a faceless figure. He had a past, a personality, and patterns that people around him saw daily. He grew up in a fairly typical environment, but cracks began to show early. Friends described mood swings, feelings of isolation, and bursts of anger that seemed to come from nowhere. Teachers remembered someone intelligent but distracted, often drifting away into his own thoughts. As he grew older, those thoughts turned darker. While on the outside, he appeared to live a normal life, studying, working, and even joking with peers. His private digital life told a different story. Text messages revealed frustration, resentment, and at times, a fascination with violent ideas. The roommate lived closest to this double life. To the outside world, they shared an apartment and a routine. But behind closed doors, tension grew. Questions linger. Did the roommate brush off unusual comments as jokes? Did they ignore the late-night typing, the secrecy, the subtle signs that something wasn't right? Understanding who the shooter was doesn't excuse his actions, but it helps explain why those texts became so crucial. They were the clearest window into his shifting state of mind. In today's world, every message leaves a trace. Even when deleted, phones record metadata times, locations, recipients. Forensic teams knew that the shooter's text could hold the truth. Investigators began piecing together a digital diary. Messages to friends showed frustration. Notes to himself revealed planning. Conversations with a roommate seemed casual at first, until placed against a timeline of events. For example, a message on one night read, "They'll all see soon." On its own, it seemed vague, but paired with another sent just days later, "Don't wait up, big things tomorrow," it raised alarms. Patterns emerged. The shooter's tone shifted from sarcasm to certainty, from talking about stress to hinting at finality. And crucially, the roommate received several of these texts. The chilling part wasn't just the content, it was the escalation. What began as jokes or vents grew sharper, darker, and more deliberate. Experts later explained that this progression is common. People rarely announce plans outright. Instead, they build toward them through coded language, subtle warnings, and testing reactions. Every message retrieved became part of a larger puzzle. Together, they didn't just tell a story. They raised the possibility that the tragedy wasn't sudden at all, but written into text long before it happened. Living with someone gives you access to their habits, the late-night routines, the strange comments, the moods that shift without warning. The shooter's roommate was in this unique position, and that has raised one of the most difficult questions in this case. How much did they actually know? Friends often describe roommates as casual companions. You share bills, chores, maybe meals, but you also share silence, arguments, and awkward moments you'd rather forget. In this story, those silences matter more than ever. The shooter's text shows signs of growing frustration, coded hints, and even veiled threats. Some of these messages were sent directly to the roommate. Others were discovered later in chat logs they might have had access to. Why didn't the roommate speak up? Experts point to something psychologists call normalcy bias. It's the human instinct to downplay unusual behavior because accepting it as dangerous feels too extreme. When a roommate jokes about violence, it's easier to roll your eyes and to imagine they mean it. But hindsight is harsh. After tragedy strikes, every ignored comment becomes a missed warning. Every overlooked late-night text feels like a flashing alarm that no one answered. The dilemma isn't just about guilt. It's about the unbearable weight of what-ifs. Could the roommate have prevented the shooting? Or were they just another victim of a secret too well hidden? As we close this investigation, one question lingers above all others. Could it have been stopped? The text told a story. They showed anger, planning, and a shift from words to action. The roommate stood close enough to read them, but far enough to miss their meaning. Forensic experts revealed the hidden signals, but only after tragedy struck. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with responsibility. To listen more carefully. To take unsettling words seriously. To understand that sometimes a text is not just a text, it's a warning. If you ever find yourself in the position of the roommate, remember, silence can be costly. Speaking up, even when uncertain, could be the difference between life and loss. This was a story of secrets written in plain sight, and the forensics that uncovered them.